Hey guys, welcome to a special episode of the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was recorded at Starbase Indy on Thanksgiving weekend. We were asked to be part of a panel for the summer movie preview, a summer movie preview panel, hosted by Mike George, one of the programmers of Starbase Indy. Longtime listeners will remember that we had a similar episode about the 2015 movie season back in OV143, and they were kind enough to ask us back, and we went. So just be forewarned that this episode was recorded using the handheld H2N that we use, so it's a little different than our normal episodes, but it's still really good content, and we were very happy to be a part of Starbase Indy once again. Special thanks to Mike George for putting it all together, and thank you to Starbase Indy for inviting us back. So yeah, well, here's the episode with me, Tiny, and Mike George talking about the 2016 summer movie season. Enjoy! Should be good to go.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Mike George. I am the co-chair of programming for Starbase Indy. I would like to welcome you to our 2016 summer movie preview. We're back again this year with the guys from the Obsessive Viewer podcast, Matt Hurt and Anthony Ramian. Am I correct?
Ramian, yeah.
Ramian? I got a pronunciation wrong on Friday.
Yeah.
And I thought I could get a little snazzy with the name Canada and spelled and pronounced it Canada. That's not how it's pronounced.
That kind of thing always freaks me out. I'm always very nervous about that.
Right. Absolutely. I know I was surprised by the box office last summer. I thought that Age of Ultron would have been demolishing the competition, but I was slightly disappointed with the film. I was hoping to see Ultron lead into the upcoming larger Infinity War storyline, but it really ended up being more of a one-off. Matt, what did you think about Age of Ultron?
Well, I actually haven't seen it since the theater, actually. And that was, in that moment, it was really exciting, and I really loved it in that moment. I think that was more due to the theater experience of it, because it was the double feature of the first one right into the second one, and it was just a packed house. But the more I thought about it, I kind of noticed that it had some problems. It was a little overloaded with, like, subplots and set up for future movies, and one of my biggest issues with it was that Ultron as a character, like the marketing, and this is unfair of me to really judge against it, but the marketing for it kind of depicted him as kind of a more menacing terror, and in the movie he was kind of a sarcastic, like Tony Stark-esque personality, which fits the narrative of the movie well, but it just wasn't really what I was expecting. But overall, it really delivered what I wanted from it, which was a strong summer movie, blockbuster, action-packed, Whedon-esque dialogue movie. So I was pretty happy with it.
Okay. So really, Jurassic World was kind of the movie that surprised me. It had that kind of sense of nostalgia, and it really seemed to kind of wipe out the competition. The movie earned over $650 million worldwide, and that's still counting. I really didn't know what to expect from the film going in, but I really, really loved it. It's the type of movie people who saw the first film can, now being 20 years later, can take their kids to. So, and it was also enough of a sequel that it could still appeal to the fans of the first trilogy of movies, but it's also standing on its own 2 feet. The references to the first film are subtle, like reminders. It doesn't delve in too deep. Anthony, what did you think about Jurassic World?
I was unfortunately pretty underwhelmed by it. I feel bad saying that because the amount of work and talent that went into the film were really impressive. All the special effects and the scale of it was just really impressive. But I think when I think about what the movie was lacking, the word that comes to mind is majesty. Because the first movie was just so majestic. It captured people's hearts, and it blew us all away with just the awesome power of nature. The idea of mankind harnessing that power was really thought-provoking and impressive in the first movie. It tapped into childlike wonder of the audience, whether you were an actual child or an adult. And I just felt like all that was mostly missing from Jurassic World. It was really the ideology that was exemplified was either this kind of weird, narrow-minded defense of animals from Chris Pratt's character that I thought was just kind of out of left field, or it was this really off-putting corporatism from Bryce Dallas Howard's character. The ideology just seemed skewed to me, and not in the true spirit of the Jurassic Park franchise, if you will. I just kind of felt like the whole movie lacked a little bit of character. Chris Pratt was really on a short leash, I think. Hardly any of his kind of signature comedic style was in the movie. They really should just kind of let him be himself and make a little more comedy naturally. I think in the original they kind of let Jeff Goldblum do his thing. He was really entertaining, as he always is. They didn't try to reel him in at all, and I think that was to a really entertaining effect in the original. So I felt like Jurassic World was mostly style with just a little bit of substance. I think it needed more than like a shiny new dinosaur and a bigger scale to keep us interested. In my opinion, a simpler plot would have been the best way to return to the franchise's glory. I ultimately had some fun with it. You know, it's hard not to have fun with dinosaurs fighting each other. It's a pretty awesome thing. But ultimately, I was kind of let down by the lack of charm and majesty.
So were either of you disappointed by any other films that you went to see this summer? And were there any movies that kind of surprised you?
Well, in terms of disappointed, I want to say Fantastic Four, but I had no aspirations for that movie. It was barely a movie. But the one movie that did actually disappoint me was actually Vacation, which I wasn't too excited to see it that much, but the trailers kind of made it look like it would be fun, and I'm a fan of the franchise and everything, but it follows this growing trend of reboot/sequel hybrids, and I mean, on one hand, that's kind of better than the alternative of just an out-and-out remake. They're trying to do something new and different, but this one just didn't work for me. There were just so many just dumb jokes that didn't land, and the story as a whole, as far as the family aspect of it, just felt really passionless, and it's just a shame because I really like Ed Helms, and I think that he did a fine job as Rusty, but he deserved to be in a better movie for the franchise, and the franchise deserved a better movie out of it. Tiny, were you disappointed by any?
I wasn't really disappointed by any, but I was pretty surprised by Kingsman: The Secret Service. I wasn't expecting a whole lot from it. I think Matt Vaughn, the director, has just kind of he's been just churning out these comic book movies, action style comic book movies. I think he's kind of fatiguing his style in that respect. And it seemed like a comic series that just came out of left field to be adapted into a movie. I'd never heard of it. I think a lot of people had never heard of it. But you know, the planning for the movie was started while the comic was being published, so I guess that kind of makes sense that it was a little more collaborative than it was adaptive. But the movie just really captured my attention, and I was enjoying the heck out of it while I was in the theater. I really loved their commitment to paying homage to the spy genre, which is really, I think, you know, obviously James Bond series is the best example, but I feel like they've been kind of the only example for the most part. I mean, I guess we have had a couple other ones, but the Bond movies just stand out, and it's kind of nice to have something else to point to in the spy genre. But I do give Matt Vaughn a lot of credit for establishing his own style when it comes to action movies and comic book movies, and I think modern audiences are really digging it, and I'm a fan of it too. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's really fun. So I hope the franchise and the filmmakers both have a long future.
It's funny, that movie I think it actually came out in February.
Did it?
Yeah, which it doesn't feel like. I think it did. I'm not sure if it. I could be wrong, and it seems like it's something that would have been really well suited for summer too. But
yeah, okay.
But one movie that did surprise me during the summer also was Straight Outta Compton. It was like a really strong drama that actually went a little further than what an ordinary music biopic would do. But then it was also a little bit favorable to the subjects of the movie who happened to be the producers of the movie. So it was kind of a mixed bag there. But I did not go into it expecting it to be that good, and it actually surprised me.
Okay, well, I want to jump right into summer 2016 with Captain America: Civil War.
Yes.
So in the Age of Ultron, we saw a little bit of a rift develop between Captain America and Iron Man. In this point in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the world's leaders are still sort of reeling from the unintended destruction caused by a new world of superheroes and alien gods. They're reacting by creating a registration act that will hold them accountable. Cap and Tony Stark end up on opposite sides of the issue and end up splitting the Avengers apart. Matt, what do you think is motivating them? Why would Tony Stark support this kind of registration act, and why would Captain America fight against it? They kind of seem to be playing a little bit against the type that they established, where
yes.
Tony is the rebel and Cap is the patriot. So
it's funny. It's on paper it seems like it would be hard for them to really figure out how to put a wedge between the two characters, because they're both really strong characters. They both have, independently of each other, they have several movies that are building up from that, and they're friends and everything. But there's a great line in the trailer where Tony says, "If we can't accept limitations, we're no better than the bad guys." And I have a feeling that Tony in the movie, and granted, I haven't read the source material or anything, and I know that I'm sure that it doesn't include the Ultron stuff or anything, but I have a feeling that Tony's kind of dealing with the fallout of what happened with Ultron, and that he's not going to let anything like that happen again. So he's receptive to limitations on their powers and everything, or on their output, I guess. And Cap has never really been a fan of the government interfering with what they do. Like, he fought Nazis, and he's seen literally the worst case scenario of government control, and so he's kind of constantly fighting to prevent it. It's kind of an extension of what the Winter Soldier had, because he was very against what they were doing with the helicarriers and stuff like that. So I feel like it's just going to be a natural progression from what they've been building toward, and I think that that's going to really benefit the movie, because that trailer is just insane.
So I have a question for both of you. It's kind of like Civil War is going to be a sort of mini Avengers sequel, Avengers 2.5. There are a few quick characters that they have cast and have decided to bring back to the series. Who are you excited to see return to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Cap 3?
It looks like Bucky's going to be back in full force, and true Bucky too. And for me, the relationship between him and Cap is one I'd really like to see explored. The first Captain America was pretty unsatisfying to me. I thought it was really cartoonish, and the characters suffered as a result of that. And then when Bucky and Cap got together again in Winter Soldier, Bucky was just basically a robot under pretty powerful mind control. So I'm hoping that, now that they're both clear-headed and they've duked it out already, the Civil War is going to allow that relationship to really go to some great places. So I'm really excited to see Bucky really be himself in this, and work with Cap based on the trailer. Mm-hmm. And plus, it's just going to be cool to see Captain America and Iron Man duke it out. I mean,
right.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. It's going to be, I think, a little bit emotionally taxing, because we've been attached to both of these characters for so many movies now and so many years, really. It kind of feels like they're real people and they're our friends and stuff. But I think the turmoil that's going to result from that, the fallout of that, the chaos, is going to be exactly what the Marvel Universe needs. It needs some friction, it needs some conflict. and I think that's going to be really appreciated by the audience. So
yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing Falcon again, just because I love the chemistry between Anthony Mackie and Chris Evans. They're just amazing on screen together. I'm looking forward to seeing their friendship kind of develop more in Civil War.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm really excited to see William Hurt back playing Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah,
the Incredible Hulk movie with Ed Norton is kind of a redheaded stepchild of the MCU.
It really is.
And to bring back one of the strongest parts of that movie into the universe just kind of makes me, really excited to see how they're going to take it. And I think he's kind of, from what I've seen, going to be sort of the new Robert Redford character from Winter Soldier, kind of the
he does kind of seem like that, yeah.
Liaison stuff. Well, on that note, the studio released a teaser trailer for the film earlier this week, so I went ahead and grabbed that. Let's hope this technology works.
Captain, while a great many people see you as a hero, there are some who'd prefer the word vigilante. You've operated with unlimited power and no supervision. That's something the world can no longer tolerate.
I know how much Bucky means to you. Stay out of this one. Please. You'll only make this worse.
You saying you'll arrest me?
There will be consequences.
Captain,
You seem a little defensive.
well, it's been a long day.
If we can't accept limitations, we're no better than bad guys.
That's not the way I see it. Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth.
I just want to make sure we consider all our options. Because people that shoot at you usually wind up shooting at me, too.
You know what's about to happen. Do you really want to punch your way out of this?
What do? We fight.
Sorry, Tommy. You know I wouldn't do this if I had any other choice. But he's my friend. So was I.
So we want to move on and talk a little bit about the new X-Men film coming out. X-Men Days of Futures Past united two generations of mutants, and it connected the Bryan Singer X-Men universe with the first class cast. Now the younger generation is kind of standing on its own, but this time an ancient enemy has returned to create a new world by destroying the old one. Anthony, how do you expect the X-Men apocalypse to stand up against Days of Future Past, and what are you excited to see from the film?
I think Apocalypse really has its work cut out for it. I can only speak for myself, but I think most audiences were really blown away by how good Days of Future Past was. I wasn't expecting it to be that awesome. And as far as how it's going to compare, the two are going to compare, Days of Future Past really felt conclusive. I mean, it felt like the end cap of a franchise. So it's going to be hard to, I think it did have a kind of a reigniting effect, kind of getting us all back into that, the previous cast and the new one, bring them together, had a fresh feel to it, but it also just felt so conclusive because they defeated like the ultimate enemy in the Sentinels, and I don't know much about Apocalypse, so maybe he is more formidable than the Sentinels, but the Sentinels just seemed like the ultimate enemy, and once you defeat that, I'm just not sure, how much, in terms of, a movie franchise, I'm not sure where it goes from that. I honestly can't see Apocalypse being a better film than Days of Future Past, but I'd love to be proved wrong. I mean, I hope it is better. It's certainly possible, of course. I'm just hoping for something that's comparable in quality to Days of Future Past. Anything more than that is really icing on the cake for Singer and company. What I'm looking forward to is really everything about it. I think I'm looking forward to the fact that I don't really know anything about it. When I was a kid, I used to love watching the X-Men cartoon, and so there was a ton of stuff about the Sentinels and that, so I already kind of had some idea about what was going to go on. But for Apocalypse, I just don't know anything about it, and it's really appealing to me. I love the idea of one of the mutants or a villain that's ancient, like Mike said. Yeah. Something that he's going to be this old, wise, wizardly kind of person. Just have all this knowledge and be such a formidable villain that it's going to be a huge test for all the X-Men. So I'm excited to see. I hope it's one of those like legendary villains, like the Joker or something like that we can really appreciate for years to come. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. Now, there's been a little bit of an online criticism of Bryan Singer's take on the supervillain Apocalypse. He doesn't look much like the villain we've seen in the comics. It's more like a goofy bad guy from an episode of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So for the questions for both of you, are you happy with this vision of the character, or do you think it's going to take the audience out of the movie?
Well, I've only seen that picture that you have posted there, and I agree. It does kind of look like a goofy Power Rangers villain, Lord Zed in particular. But I have to assume that maybe it's not the full rendering of it, because I figure that they might do something in post-production to kind of alter the look a little bit, maybe. But I don't have a problem with it because Oscar Isaac is playing Apocalypse, and he is a phenomenal actor. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table in terms of being a villain in this franchise.
He's very purple.
Very purple.
Not cool.
I believe I read that it's the same either costumer or creative designer that worked on Power Rangers. So
really?
Obviously, gonna be in. I think at least one of the movies, but I can't verify that.
Wow.
So yeah,
that doesn't bode well then.
I'm always critical of the costuming in Bryan Singer's X-Men movies. Especially Days of Futures Past. It's supposed to be set in this post-apocalyptic future, and yet they all have bling. And it's all like...
That's true.
It's a little... Where did they get a tailor to... In 2014, Michael Bay brought a controversial live-action version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the big screen. But the film was successful enough to inspire a sequel, due out in June. I'm actually a little excited to see this. We're going to see some characters from the TMNT expanded universe in the new film, including names you might recognize like Casey Jones, Bebop and Rocksteady, and my all-time personal favorite, Baxter Stockman. Matt, do you think there is a chance that the movie could be successful, and what has to happen to make it work?
I think there's a very good chance it'll be successful. If I'm not mistaken, I think Casey Jones is being played by Stephen Amell. From Arrow, and I'm sure that'll probably bring in an audience, as well as other things like I have two nephews and they love the Ninja Turtles, and I think that the new one last year was a lot of fun to watch, and I haven't seen it since the theater, but I think that what they've tapped into there is it might be a little, granted it might be a little hardcore fans of the franchise might not be too fond of it, but I think that between a younger audience who's really getting into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at this age, and also an adult audience, I think that those two audiences will come to see it and hopefully be entertained by it. And then also they've cornered the market or they've gotten, like you said, a lot of the bigger names or a lot of the fan favorite names from the franchise into this movie. So I think that if they do it right and they do the marketing right, it'll bring in plenty of people. I would say it would probably be. I would assume it would be bigger than the last one, a bigger success. That's my prediction, at least.
Oh, okay. So after 20 years, Roland Emmerich is finally bringing fans the sequel to his wildly popular sci-fi disaster movie, Independence Day. And yes, Star Trek fans, Brent Spiner's back. This was the first big summer blockbuster blockbuster that really surprised me as a kid. It was like a little bit of a buzz going for this film, like in magazines back in the days before the internet. And but after 20 years, we're finally getting something new. Anthony, do you think that the Independence Day franchise can appeal to a new generation of fans? And do you think this movie could be like kind of the nostalgia hit of the summer, just like Jurassic Park was this year?
Definitely.
Jurassic World, sorry.
Jurassic World. Definitely yes on the nostalgic hit. This is going to make money. I think it's really going to appeal to the 30 to 40-year-old demographic who were younger when the first one came out. I fall into that category, absolutely. I'm going to go see this. I don't care what the trailer looks like. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to go see it. So it's going to make money. It's going to be a big hit for nostalgic reasons. But I'm just not sure how much the franchise is really going to appeal to a modern audience. Alien Invasion is really like a subgenre that's been kind of beat to death and overused over the last decade and a half, maybe. Movies like Battle Los Angeles, War of the Worlds, Skyline.
Wow.
And a lot of it was done to pretty poor effect, not very good standards. Those movies weren't that great, and I think the modern audience, the young demographic, didn't really like it, and that's for good reason because a lot of those movies aren't that great. So I think younger people or a modern audience might not like it as much, even though it is a franchise. I just don't. I'm not sure. I'm curious to see what the numbers are like as far as age groups and stuff like that. Because I think it's going to be mostly people who are over 30 who go see this and enjoy it and want to see more. I can't help but be excited for it. I have a strange affection for Will Smith. I'm one of the 6 people who read his biography in the 90s when I was like 10 years old. I don't even remember it, but I've loved Will Smith forever, and I think I've never met a person who doesn't like Will Smith. He has the best track record ever as far as bringing in an audience and making huge blockbuster movies. So the movie's going to do well. There's no doubt about that. We'll just see how good it is.
All right. So we really haven't seen a new Ghostbusters movie since 1989. The closest thing we got was to a true sequel was kind of the Ghostbusters video game that came out a few years ago. After the death of Harold Ramis last year, hopes for a true reunion were put aside. In July, Bridesmaids director Paul Feig is bringing a brand new vision of the Ghostbusters to the big screen with an all-female team of paranormal investigators and eliminators. So, for both of you, do you think this new version of the Ghostbusters will recapture the magic of the first 2 films or stand on its own? Will casting Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy make it too much like Bridesmaids for some hardcore fans to handle?
I don't think the gender swap will be that big of an issue. I really think that it's almost inspired that it. I think that they cast Channing Tatum as the secretary character, so I kind of like that they're going to play with convention a little bit there, and I think that'll be a fun dynamic to see. And I think that as long as Paul Feig is respectful to the franchise, I don't see why he wouldn't be. I think that it could really, as long as he does right by the franchise, I think that it could be a success and it could be a hit. And I mean, Kristen Wiig is one of the most talented comedic actresses working today, and I think that the cast it'll really lie in the casting and how those characters play off of each other. Really, Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they really just need to make this their own. They don't need to try to recapture the comedic stylings of Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. That would just be a terrible idea. Comedy has to be organic, and it needs to fit with the comedians who are trying to express it. You can't just tell someone, "Hey, tell these kind of jokes." You have to say, "This is what we want to do. How would you make this joke, or how would you do this scene?" It needs to be organic, and they need to make it their own. I don't think it's going to be like Bridesmaids. They need to respect the characters and respect the source material, but they can't try to just emulate those characters from the 80s. Make your own characters. Melissa McCarthy's kind of played the same character a few too many times. So she needs to come out with something fresh for this for this movie. And Kristen Wiig she's a really versatile actress. I think she needs a character specifically suited to the subject and not just some kind of general female character who like stumbles into this. I mean, it needs to be specific, and they need to dive into the characters wholeheartedly with full force. I think there's a lot of potential for greatness with the movie, but it could just as easily get screwed up. So we'll see.
We'll see. In late July, we'll see the third feature in the new alternate timeline Star Trek universe with Star Trek Beyond. The film's creators have been tight-lipped about the project, but the choice of director Justin Lin, a veteran of the Fast and the Furious franchise, shows their commitment to fast-paced action. Simon Pegg co-wrote the screenplay for the new film. Matt, can Star Trek still appeal to traditional fans while at the same time drawing a new audience? And what are you hoping to see in the new film?
Well, I think it'll still bring in money, and it'll turn a profit, and it'll be a big hit, I'm sure. But I'm really curious how much of the first two were because of J.J. Abrams, because he really made an effort to make it more Star Wars-y. And I personally hope that they make it a more thought-provoking, philosophical Star Trek, because I've actually gone and watched some of the original series, most of the original series. I just love that kind of that thought-provoking storytelling that they had in that series, and it makes me kind of hesitant to actually revisit J.J. Abrams movies now that I've seen the original series, because it kind of feels like it's very flashy and very action-heavy, and like I said, very Star Wars like. And I think that now that we're going to be getting Star Wars consistently every year, I kind of wonder if the success of J.J. Abrams' movies was how much of that was contingent on there not being any Star Wars and it being kind of filling a void for a Star Wars like sci-fi adventure movie. But I really hope that they just go back to that kind of the 5-year mission, basically. That's what I really, really want to see out of it, and see them do more exploring and thought-provoking sci-fi.
Okay. Well, the DC Cinematic Universe is hoping to strike back at Marvel in the next year, and Suicide Squad may end up being the biggest draw of the summer. It's sort of DC's version of the Avengers, only with supervillains instead of superheroes. Many fans are anticipating Jared Leto's version of the Joker, but I think Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn may be the breakout character from the film. Anthony, what does the Suicide Squad movie have to do to compete with the Avengers and with the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I wish I knew how to feel about this movie. I'm cautiously excited for it, reluctantly excited for it. The trailers look cool, and the advertising has kind of hooked me a little bit. But the concept is just such a big jump for DC from what they've been doing to this. Is just kind of it's like they're skipping over several steps. But of course, there's nothing wrong with breaking the mold and trying something new and fresh. I can't blame them for that. But none of these characters have been established in any other films. There's no, with the exception of the Joker, there's just these other characters are just big unknowns. So much character establishment will have to take place in the movie while developing conflict at the same time. That's just such a big juggling job. It's just hard to fit all that in there. I think the movie's kind of destined to either be bogged down with too much exposition, or the characters are going to be lacking and we're not really going to connect to them. I think it's just kind of destined for one of those two outcomes. It just seems like far too ambitious of a movie to me. Avengers was really ambitious, but it had tons of foundation to build on, and tons of talent involved with it. The Suicide Squad does not have that foundation at all. They're gonna have to build that while the movie's going, and I don't know if they can pull it off. To compete with the Avengers, the movie's gonna have to establish credible, believable characters, and they're gonna have to make the audience want to see them come together. And they have an even bigger challenge given that they're anti-heroes, villainous characters. There's just so many barriers in the way for this to be as good as the Avengers. I don't think anyone's really going to see that coming. This movie seems like a step that's a few films further into a universe or a franchise. I think they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot with Suicide Squad. But again, I'd love to be proved wrong. I'm all for good movies being made, so if it's good, that's awesome. I think it has plenty of potential to succeed financially and creatively. And I hope that the DC can kind of break out of their post-Dark Knight funk with this.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we kind of wrap up here a little bit, I'd like to ask everyone on the panel, what movie do you think will be the biggest blockbuster of the summer?
Well, I didn't like Man of Steel, but I think that Batman v Superman is going to be just a massive, massive success. It's the first live-action movie with those two characters in it, and I think that it's... Had I not seen the trailer for Civil War, I think that it would have been just kind of really easy to just say Batman v Superman is going to be huge. But I mean, Civil War is also kind of that same kind of dynamic, two heroes fighting each other. So I think that either one of those things, or either one of those movies, are going to be the biggest hit of the summer, I think. But I think that it'll probably be Batman v Superman. As much as I didn't like Man of Steel and how not disinterested I am in DC, their cinematic universe, but I don't know. The trailers for Batman v Superman look really good and everything, but I'll see it. I won't see it opening weekend, but I'll see it. But I'm sure that everyone else will see it.
Yeah, and for me, it's going to be Marvel versus DC. This time, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a trade-off between Batman and Superman and Civil War. I think audiences are going to be more excited for Civil War, though. They're kind of just now getting into a lot of the advertising for that. I think audiences are going to turn out more for that because I think it's the next perfect step for the progress of that story and that franchise that's so deeply established already. It just makes sense for that storyline. I think both of them will either get very close to or exceed the $1 billion mark. Really, the difference between the two movies is going to be negligible. They're both just going to be huge juggernauts, and I think both of the studios are going to be pretty happy with the dollar return for their investment on those movies. So we'll just have to wait and see what those two do. But I think it's going to be one of those two.
Yeah. So we sort of had Fantastic Four kind of became like the biggest train wreck of this summer.
Yeah.
What movies on the slate for summer release are kind of worrying you? Kind of think they might bomb.
There's a movie that's coming out, and I think July, that everyone, I'm sure, has it marked on their calendars. The Angry Birds movie, which I think is not going to perform that well. Because I don't even know if Angry Birds is even really in the cultural consciousness. I don't have it downloaded anymore. It was kind of a fleeting kind of time waster, and I don't see how a movie is gonna really sell tickets to it unless. I don't know. Yeah, I don't see that performing that well. Tiny, how about you?
I really hope the biggest flop is The Huntsman: Winter's War, the sequel to the first Huntsman movie. The first one was just awful. It's another example of Hollywood putting out anything that has source material. Anything that's established, it's like, well, we're going to make one of these because it's going to make money. It's a cash grab. It's indicative of a lack of creativity and originality in this 21st century Hollywood. I really just hope the movie flops like a dead fish right from the get-go. No more Kristen Stewart and stupid Cinderella crap or whatever it is. No, it's not Cinderella. It's Snow White. Snow White, yeah. Whatever, same thing.
I'm kind of with that, wanting it to fail. So I don't see any more of it with the the Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland sequel, Alice Through the Looking Glass. Now, I know the source material. I've read it when I was younger, and I enjoyed it, and enjoy Lewis Carroll, but it's just an entire movie shot in front of a blue screen.
Yep.
Yeah. Completely. I mean, it's an animated movie. It's a cartoon, and they've photoshopped live actors into it.
Yeah.
And I want it to fail so that he will stop making movies like that and go back and make something that the studio controls a little bit more, like Batman. Or even Batman Returns, which was more of his vision. A little more odd, but more like just doing things with practical effects. His stuff is so just off the wall, computer generated in recent years.
That's my safety flop.
Yeah, definitely.
Hope that it fails.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking in terms of a sleeper surprise for the like a sleeper hit. And it's a select audience, so it might not. But there's the sequel to The Conjuring coming out, and that's probably one of and it's based on a true story, and it's probably one of the first one was probably one of the scariest movies I've seen in the last decade.
Very effective.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
I had a pretty vivid nightmare after watching that film last year, and I'm just really excited to see that. And I think a lot of horror fans, and it's got a strong enough cast that it could bring and appeal to some people and bring in audiences outside of just horror audiences. So, what do you guys think about sleeper hits?
Well, really quickly about The Conjuring 2, I kind of hope that Annabelle didn't cause any ill will toward the fan base, because I did not like that movie that much, and it's supposed to be connected in a sort of kind of tangential way to The Conjuring. So hopefully that doesn't hamper The Conjuring 2. But as far as a sleeper surprise for me, we talked about Independence Day, and I think that I'm just judging from this summer's performance of Jurassic World, and I mean, I think that that'll lead to Independence Day being a success. But also The Jungle Book, I'm hesitant to say that because Pan was panned, and it was a big flop last year, which it's kind of not really similar, but I just established properties make me hesitant now like that. But The Jungle Book has ScarJo and I want to say Idris Elba in it, and also Jon Favreau is making it, which I'm a big fan of his. So hopefully that's a success, if only because I like Jon Favreau and he seems like a good dude, and I want good things to happen to him. So hopefully that's good.
But it seems like they make a new Jungle Book adaptation every 10 years. And it's always something new. And this time it's computer animated animals with live action, but they talk and the voices of the actors are laid over. And I'm hesitant. I don't know. I think the story's been said. I mean, I always look at that classic animated film from the '60s from Disney, and say that's my Jungle Book, and that's what it's going to be. And I don't want them to remake it. It's going to have to bring something in it, but with Favreau bringing it in. Creating this project, it might be a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, if Favreau wasn't involved, I probably wouldn't really give a second look to it.
It'll have a sense of humor, so that's good.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad Matt mentioned Pan, because I think that was my pick last year.
It was, and I wasn't trying to... Well, I was trying to bring that up because...
That was a bad pick, because it did terribly. And I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's not that great. I think I may have also mentioned... Mad Max Fury Road last year, which was a breakout hit, and I'm glad it was a hit.
Didn't do better than Pitch Perfect 2, but I mean, you got to look at it was a demographic audience for that and all that stuff.
It was a big success. So my pick for this year, also, I just really don't know. It's pretty early in production, but I'm going with Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur. Which we don't really even hardly know anything about it yet. I'm really only listing this as a surprise for it being good, as opposed to it making a crap ton of money, being an actual blockbuster. I don't know if it's going to bring in a ton of money, but I think it could be really good, and the reason is because it's directed by Guy Ritchie. He hasn't done a lot lately, and most of his films that he's kind of known for are smaller independent movies that didn't make a ton of money, like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch. But he made hugely successful movies with the Sherlock Holmes movies. Those were quality films, and they were huge hits. So, if he takes this really classic story and makes it his own, I think it's going to be. I think it could be a pretty good movie. He has Charlie Hunnam cast in it, and he's pretty hit or miss. I like him enough, but I don't know if he has the power for this. We'll see. I mean, I think Guy Ritchie's going to be the star of this. Really, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical about it, but I think it's kind of a bold pick for a biggest surprise. I hope it does surprise us.
Guy Ritchie also did this year, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., I think.
Oh, did he do that?
I think so, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I don't know how well that performed, though, so I don't think that it was that big of a hit.
It was in that August lull,
yeah,
and the studio didn't give it enough of a push.
Right.
It didn't perform well, but it's still got that Guy Ritchie sense of style. I mean, Guy Ritchie's one of those directors you think either DC or Marvel needs to pick him up and put him into one of these major projects. Marvel, until they lost Edgar Wright on Ant-Man, was kind of doing this. We're going to find an A-list director or a
niche director,
and put him in each of these projects and then make it But they're going. Disney's tightening the reins a little bit on Marvel Studios, very corporate, and they're gonna. And I really enjoyed Ant-Man. Over the summer, but it was again one of those movies that it just felt like it was missing just the tiniest bit, the tiniest bit that what it could have been with if Edgar Wright. And I think people are always going to ask what it could have been if Edgar Wright was. Now, in terms of mentioning the King Arthur film, that's another project like the Jungle Book, where every 10 years we get a new. Yeah. I think there was the King Arthur movie in the 2000s, and then there was the Clive Owen one, and then there was the one with Sean Connery, was it First Night, and Richard Gere in the 90s. So every 10 years we get a chance to jump into this franchise. But with Guy Ritchie directing it, I'm going to go see it because he directed it. Yeah. And the casting's going to, if the casting's right and you've got different character actors in it, it could work really well. So. Yeah. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank everyone for participating and enjoying this panel this morning. Sorry about the technical difficulties again this year, but we'll work on that for next time around. And I want you guys to enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of Starbase Indy. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys. And this will be on obsessiveviewer.com, the panel, if you want to check it out.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome discussion.
And that was our Starbase Indy panel for 2015 about the 2016 movie preview. Anyway, thanks once again to Mike George and to everyone involved with Starbase Indy. They have been super kind to us the past couple of years to let us to invite us to the convention and let us do a panel and all that stuff. It's really great of them, and it's a really nice, cool convention that's pretty much completely centered around science fiction and everything. We didn't get a chance to really check it out in full this year, but I know that they had some very notable guests there this year, and I'm sure that they're just going to continue growing from there. It's really cool to be a very, very small part of that convention here in Indianapolis. Since this is a shorter episode, I was going to just go ahead and spew out a few things. That is the wrong way to say it. First of all, if this is your first time listening to The Obsessive Viewer, we're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes of the podcast at ovpodcast.com and also subscribe to it on iTunes, Stitcher, in the future, Google Play. Pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, we're there. And then also we have a corresponding blog where I primarily write written reviews of movies and TV shows and also write commentary and stuff like that about the industry as a whole at obsessiveviewer.com. All of this is going to be in the pre-recorded outro that I'm going to play here in a second. But I do want to mention that I also it was pointed out to me on the internets that there's a website called Letterboxd.com. It's Letterboxd. That's Letterboxd.com. It's like a social network for cinephiles, and you can basically keep a diary of all the movies you watch and all that, and keep ratings and reviews. One of our longtime listeners pointed it out to me when I tweeted something about how difficult it is for me to track my movies watched with just a Word document and Evernote, because I apparently live in 2002. But Letterboxd is amazing. I signed up, so if you're on there, give me a follow. Check out my reviews and all that stuff there. Like, I kind of have I'm planning on having like micro reviews, and with links to full reviews and podcast episodes within the review on Letterboxd. Anyway, it's letterboxd.com/obsessiveviewer. And I spent a lot of time just putting in all of my data over the past year into that. So please check it out, and please, reach me there. Also, we have a subreddit at r/obsessiveviewer where, well, basically what I'm hoping to do on Letterboxd is basically what I was hoping to do with Reddit. So subscribe there. I'm all over the place here. So, as I said, we're a weekly movie and TV podcast covering a specific topic every episode, and I just want to give a quick rundown of some of the things that we have planned in the next few weeks here to round out 2015. Next week, we're going to have 2 episodes devoted to Star Wars. We originally intended to do an episode about the original trilogy and then a separate episode about the prequel trilogy, both of which Mike came back for, so our longtime co-host, who is currently on sabbatical from the podcast, returned for those episodes. Those will be next week. However, we did end up just not sticking to the format quite as we had planned, and it ended up being a very interesting episode recording session for us. So yeah, look forward to checking that out next week. Of course, that'll be at obsessiveviewer.com/OV144 and 145. And then after that, we're going to be doing a review of Star Wars The Force Awakens. And then after that, we're going to probably do an extended potpourri, and then I think that we're going to have a Seinfeld retrospective episode with me and Mike to round out the year. So that's stuff that we have in the works throughout the rest of the year, and I am super busy trying to get as many 2015 movies watched so that at the beginning of the year, when we have our annual end of the year movie year in review movies episode, I can have a very well-rounded top 10 and bottom 10 and all that. So anyway, thanks again for listening. I think that that's about all that I have to say in terms of rambling things and everything. I worked like 12 hours today, so that's why I'm all over the place. Yeah, so anyway, I'll throw it to the pre-recorded outros. By the way, that extended potpourri here in a couple weeks, that will be when I talk about my potpourri section that I talked about a couple weeks ago in the Creed episode and the food documentaries episode. I was chosen to watch, or Tiny blindly chose for me to watch a documentary about absinthe and Pontypool. And so I'll have those reviews in our extended potpourri episode, which will probably be OV146 here in the coming weeks. So, yeah, once again, thanks to Starbase Indy, thanks to Mike George for setting up the panel and hosting us there and everything. And we look forward to doing it again next year. And, yeah, thanks for listening, and have a good one.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes, and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at ObsessiveViewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@ObsessiveViewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.